Hello friends, welcome back to our video number 2 in the automated tender tool. In this video, we are going to look at the components that make up this tool. The three different components that work together to make the tool work as it designed to work. So these are the validation sheet. You see here the assessment sheet and then the scoring sheet. On the validation sheet here, what we simply did was to get all the questions that we use to assess the vendors and then the possible responses and then the maximum scores for positive response and the minimum score for the other responses. So you can see these questions here up to this point, they either take yes or no responses. For instance, each vendor is expected to submit 2 copies of the proposal or the bid. And upon assessment, the question will be asked, did vendor submit 2 copies? If yes, maximum score is 2. If no, it's 0. The vendor needs to be registered in the pool. So when you come to this vendor, you are going to either answer yes or no to this question. And the same thing applies here. Now you will see that different scores on weights have been assigned to each question. Now it depends on the organization or the department or the user. He may feel one question is more important than the other, and so he assigns different weights. In this case, we assign 2, 2 and 5, 5 up to this point. And then when we come to the years of experience and whether the vendor has adequate workforce, this has up to 4 different options with different scores. For instance, the years of experience, if the person has less than 3 years, it scores 1. If the experience is between 3 years and 5 years, it scores 3. If it is between 6 to 8 years, it scores 5, and anything up to 9 and above, it scores 8. Like I said, this is dependent on what you want to assign, the type of weight that you want to assign to each response. Again, we will come to workforce. If they have adequate or if do not have adequate, again, based on the responses and based on the importance you attach to each of them, you can assign different weights. Now, when we get to the video proper for each of this sheet, we will tell you how and why we did this kind of naming a range. Like you see here, from this to this point, these are the possible options or possible responses under adequate workforce. Over here, this is the name box. We have named this as workforce. Again, when you look at the years of experience, the possible options, we have also renamed that range. So when we come to the next videos, when we'll be discussing each of the sheets, how we developed and write the different functions inside each, we'll be able to explain that in details. Now, this is just an overview of this component. Now let's go to the assessment sheet. If you watch the first video, you will see how we started entering this and how we came to this point. This could not open because a no is preceding it. The same thing here. Once a no precedes, you will no longer have an option. Now here, you will see that these ones, from here up to this point, they are linked. to this validation sheet here. So we use indirect function during the data validation, and that is why we get this. So again, by the time we'll be doing the video for the assessment component, we will explain how we incorporated the indirect function in the drop-down data validation, so that once it gets no here, the next option here, you won't see anything here. And then the next thing we want to also explain here is that this sheet here, which we see here, is also linked. So both of them are interlinked. While this validation sheet is directly linked to the assessment, and then the assessment sheet and the scoring sheet, they are interlinked. Now see what happens over here. You can see as you give option responses to each of these questions based on the weights that we have assigned here. By the time you select yes or no, the score comes up here. The next one, the score comes up and adds to whatever was there before to update the total score. Now, here you will see that this is picking value from the, yes, because this is popping up because this is protected. So let me unprotect it. Please also note that when you writing or developing this kind of tool, it's essential also to lock all the possible places where you know if accidental delete happens or accidental data input takes place in those cells, it could result into very unpleasant situation, giving you errors on distorting what you have done. All right, so I'm going to protect this sheet. So you can see that this is linked to scoring sheet, which is here. All right, so here again is also linked to scoring sheet. This is also linked to scoring sheet, and this is linked to scoring sheet. So you see, validation sheet supplies data to the assessment, and then this assessment supplies data to scoring sheet over here, and then this scoring sheet also supplies data back to this assessment. Like you see here, these ones here on the assessment, they are receiving feeds from the scoring sheet. Like you can see, this is linked there, so anything that happens here will reflect over there. Now let's see how this also works. On the scoring sheet, we have a whole lot of logic functions. You can see here we have if this assessment sheet cell, this is yes, it should give you 2. If it doesn't give you 0. Okay, by the time we will be explaining this, we will be doing the video for each of these. We'll be able to explain in details how to write those functions. And up to this point, let's see where up to this point. Here we use VLOOKUP. You can see on column J, we use a VLOOKUP. So it is looking and values from this. You can see this assessment sheet. It's picking value here and cross-checking them on the validation sheet and then returning the values on the scoring sheet. All right, so we will also be explaining that in detail, how we are able to link our values on this sheet from the assessment sheet and then looking across different sheets. You can see this is looking across different sheets. Here we ask it, go to assessment sheet, pick this J3, look for the value under this validation sheet, and then return the value that you see on a particular column to this column here. So we'll be explaining that in detail in a subsequent video. Again, here we also use VLOOKUP. So for these places that we use VLOOKUP, you will see that they are here, let me go, let's just visit the validation sheet. This is the point where we are looking up. So we are saying if the assessment that you get here, this is J here for years of experience. If you see any value you see here, cross-check it here, and then give us the value you see here. All right, so that's what we are seeing happening here. And here on the column L is the total score, like we explained, that is happening. All right, so here collates the total scores here, and then it displays it here. And then because here on assessment sheet is linked to this scoring sheet, it picks the value, like you can see here, is picking value from scoring sheet L3. So whatever that this is able to generate from here, it puts it here, and then by linking, it picks up the value from this scoring sheet and deposit it here. Now, so let's look at what we have here on the scoring sheet next on the remarks column. So here we have a whole lot of logic functions being nested together. If I open this right now, you will see we have this. Okay, again, this is protected, so let me unprotect it. So when you look at this point here, you see if and then and. All right, there are 3 ifs here and 1 and, all nested together. All right, so and stops here. You can see this is the closing bracket for the and then here we open another if function. Here we open the third if function, and then we closed this. All right, so this is the same thing that happened across each of these rules. Then when we come to remarks on mandatory document, again, we look at this, and it is also looking at assessment sheet to return and give us the remarks. Assuming the vendor has all the mandatory documents, the vendor does not have the 6AC document. All right, so we'll also be explaining in detail how these nested logic functions come in, and how we are able to bring in um, text strings that is displaying as text. Okay, so when we also look at the verdict column, again, we see it's also nested. We have the first if and the and functions over here, second if function, and of course the third if function, all nested together. All right, so this is the structure of each of the sheets that work together to make the tender to work the way it is designed to work. In subsequent video, in our next video, we'll be looking at the validation sheet. What do we have this for? Why do we need that? How do we incorporate the drop-down list? Because we have here on the assessment, we have drop down here. You click here, you see this drop down here. You click here, you don't see anything, even though there's a drop down. Why? Because there is a no here. But here we have yes or no. Here we have yes or no. All right, so we'll be discussing that in our next video. Thank you very much for watching. Please stay tuned on this channel, share and like. Goodbye.